At 3 a.m. in 1966, in cell 47 of the Los Angeles County Jail, 65-kilogram Bruce Lee brought a 130-kilogram killer, known as Crusher, Morrison to his knees in just 7 seconds. A man who had crushed his previous cellmate's throat with his bare hands. The man whom even the guards feared found himself on the floor for the first time in his life, gasping heavily for air, and for the first time in 10 years, asked to be taught. How did Bruce Lee, who had just been thrown into a cell with a monster, manage to completely overpower the block's most dangerous inmate in a matter of seconds? To understand this, one must go back to the night when an administrative error sent him to share a cell with a man everyone considered unstoppable. At 3 a.m. in 1966, Bruce Lee was being led down the long corridor of Block D at the Los Angeles County Jail. Handcuffs coldly squeezed his wrists. 2 guards walked on either side of him, their boots echoing loudly against the concrete floor. An administrative error. He had been arrested for self-defense in a street fight he didn't start. Witnesses confirmed his innocence, but it was Friday evening. The judge was unavailable until Monday, and the system simply threw him into a cell for the weekend. Bruce walked calmly, back straight, gaze steady, movements economical. He was 25 years old, weighed 65 kilograms, and had already managed to revolutionize the concept of human capabilities in martial arts. But right now, he was just a man forced by the system into one of the most dangerous corners of Los Angeles. The jail of 1966 lived by its own laws. Neither courts, justice, nor the rules of the outside world applied here. What ruled here was brute force, fear, and a rigid hierarchy where the weak were broken quickly and mercilessly. The thick stench of sweat, urine, and cheap disinfectant hung like a wall. Screams, the rattling of bars, and maniacal laughter echoed from the cells. Every step down the corridor brought him closer to the inevitable. The guard stopped at the last door, cell 47D. Senior guard Murphy noticeably hesitated. Usually, no one was placed here. James Crusher Morrison lived in this cell. A 2-meter-tall giant weighing 130 kilograms, a former professional wrestler. He had already killed one cellmate with his bare hands by crushing his throat and had sent 3 others into a coma. 5 guards couldn't subdue him without injuries. For Morrison, the small Asian man in his cell was a perfect toy to break slowly and with pleasure. Bruce stood in front of the opening door, understanding the main point. The stake tonight wasn't just surviving until Monday. The stake was remaining himself, not breaking, not yielding, and not losing his dignity in a place where dignity was stripped away faster than anywhere else. He wasn't looking for a fight. He wanted only one thing: to wait peacefully for his hearing and return to his family. But the system had already made the choice for him. The confrontation became inevitable the second the heavy metal door of cell 47D creaked open, and Bruce Lee stepped inside. Bruce Lee walked down the long corridor of Block D at the Los Angeles County Jail, handcuffs cold against his wrists. 2 guards walked on either side, their boots echoing loudly on the concrete floor. It was 3 a.m. The prison never fully slept. From behind metal doors came muffled screams, the clanging of bars, and someone's low, maniacal laughter. The air was thick and heavy, saturated with the smell of sweat, urine, and cheap disinfectant. Every step brought him closer to the inevitable. Guard Murphy walked slightly ahead, noticeably nervous. Young James, the second guard, looked even more tense. They stopped at the last door, cell 47D. Murphy hesitated. Usually, no one was put in here. Inside this cell was James Crusher Morrison, a 2-meter giant weighing 130 kilograms, a former professional wrestler. He had already killed one cellmate by crushing his throat with his bare hands and sent 3 others into a coma. 5 guards couldn't subdue him without injury. For Morrison, a small Asian man in his cell was an ideal toy. Murphy looked at Bruce Lee. You're small, easy prey for him. He'll break you just for fun. Stay calm. Keep quiet, don't provoke him. Sleep on the floor if he tells you to. Bruce nodded silently. The door creaked open. The heavy metal door opened slowly, revealing a cramped 3 by 4 meter space. A bunk bed, a toilet without a seat, a rickety sink. And occupying almost the entire visual space, sitting on the lower bunk, was Morrison. He was a mountain of muscle. A shaved head covered in tattoos, a scarred face, a neck as thick as a thigh, and hands the size of dinner plates. He didn't stand up. He only turned his head slowly. His eyes locked onto Bruce. A smile appeared on his face, revealing rotten teeth. A heavy silence hung in the cell. Morrison slowly studied his new cellmate. His gaze glided over Bruce's slender frame, the handcuffs, the calm expression on his face. In the silence, the dripping of the tap could be heard. Morrison spoke, his voice low and heavy as stone. He established the rules. This is my bunk. The top one is mine too. Everything here is mine, including you. You'll sleep on the floor by the toilet, you won't use my sink, and you won't look at me. Break the rules, I'll break you. Got it? Bruce stood motionless. His gaze remained steady. He answered calmly and clearly. I understand your rules. Now I'll give you mine. I will sleep on the top bunk, I will use the sink, I will breathe as I want, and you will not touch me. A dead silence filled the cell. Morrison blinked, then began to laugh. You've got guts, stupid ones, but guts. I'm going to enjoy breaking you slowly. He stood up, his full height almost touching the ceiling. The cell instantly felt cramped. The giant filled the entire space, his shadow falling over Bruce. A final chance. On your knees. Apologize. Accept the rules. Bruce didn't move. No. Morrison took 3 heavy steps forward. The cell shook. He reached out a massive hand to grab Bruce by the throat. And then everything changed. Bruce moved first. With a speed that seemed impossible in such a tight space, he entered right into the danger zone. His right hand shot up along a perfect trajectory, his open palm striking the base of Morrison's nose with surgical precision. Not hard enough to break the bone, but just enough to cause an instant reflex head jerk and a surge of tears. Morrison roared, his vision blurring instantly. He shook his massive head, trying to clear his eyes. Bruce didn't give him a single second. His body turned in a fluid pivot, his right elbow crashing with devastating precision into the floating ribs. The lower ones, unattached to the sternum, the most vulnerable even on such a giant. Morrison exhaled loudly in pain, air forcibly escaping his lungs. He tried to respond with a wild left hook, a wide, telegraphed swing full of raw power, but lacking precision. Bruce slipped to the side like smoke. The fist flew past just inches away. Bruce instantly caught the thick wrist with both hands, jerked it forward sharply, and simultaneously swept the trailing leg from behind. Morrison's center of gravity, already compromised, lost all stability. 130 kilograms crashed heavily forward. Bruce applied pressure to the elbow, twisting the arm into an unnatural angle. Morrison screamed in genuine pain for the first time in years. He fell to his knees. Bruce immediately transitioned to a chokehold. His arm wrapped around the thick neck, compressing the carotid artery with precise force. Morrison thrashed, trying to reach his attacker, but the angle was completely wrong. Vision began to darken at the edges. Panic swept over him. He, who had always been the absolute dominant force, felt his body failing and his muscles losing strength for the first time in his life. Bruce felt the giant weaken and released him immediately. A firm push, and Morrison fell heavily forward onto the concrete floor. 7 seconds. Everything happened in 7 seconds. A 65 kilograms man had completely dismantled a 130 kilograms monster. Morrison lay on all fours, coughing heavily and gasping for air. A different kind of silence hung in the cell. Not the silence before the fight, but a silence in which the entire previous hierarchy had collapsed. Bruce stepped back 3 paces and calmly looked down at the defeated giant. The empty cell no longer belonged to Morrison alone. The desert that had just been an arena had now become a witness. The hierarchy that had seemed rock solid just a second ago had crashed down onto the cold concrete along with the crusher. The door of cell 47D slammed shut with a heavy metallic clang, and the cramped 3 by 4 meter space immediately fell deathly silent. Only water dripped from the old faucet, and somewhere far down the block, bars rattled faintly. Morrison slowly rose from the lower bunk, filling almost all visible space in the cell. A 2-meter mountain of muscle covered in tattoos and scars stepped forward, the floor shaking imperceptibly beneath his feet. He was in no hurry. He was savoring the moment, knowing that the small Asian man should be breaking right about now. Bruce Lee stood motionless, arms relaxed, expression calm. Morrison took 3 heavy steps and reached out a huge hand to grab him by the throat. At that moment, everything changed in a matter of seconds. Bruce didn't step back. He stepped right into the danger zone. His right palm shot up, hitting the base of Morrison's nose with surgical precision. The strike was calculated precisely, not to break the bone, but to cause an immediate flood of tears and an involuntary head reflex backward. Morrison roared, his vision blurring instantly. He furiously shook his massive head to clear his eyes, but Bruce didn't. Give him a single second to recover. Bruce's body turned in a seamless pivot, his right elbow striking with devastating force right into the floating lower ribs, the most vulnerable area even on such a giant. Air escaped Morrison's lungs with a gasp. He tried to counter with a wild left hook, wide, raw, and full of brute strength. Bruce slipped to the side like smoke, the fist whistling past inches from his face. Bruce immediately trapped the thick wrist with both hands, yanked it forward abruptly, and swept the support leg at the ankle from behind. Morrison's center of gravity completely collapsed. 130 kilograms crashed heavily forward. Bruce applied pressure to the hyperextended elbow. Morrison screamed in actual pain for the first time in years and dropped to his knees, the concrete floor echoing with a dull thud. Bruce instantly shifted into a rear choke. His arm wrapped around the thick neck, pressing the carotid artery with calibrated force. Morrison thrashed, trying to reach his opponent, but the angle was completely wrong. Darkness began creeping into his vision. Panic overwhelmed him as the giant's muscles drained of power. Bruce felt the body go limp and released him at once. A solid push, and Morrison collapsed heavily forward. Massive palms slapped against the cold concrete. He coughed, gasping desperately for air. 7 seconds. Everything happened in 7 seconds. A 65 kilograms man had completely dismantled a 130 kilograms monster. The silence in the cell became absolute. Morrison remained on all fours, breathing heavily, staring at the floor. Bruce took 3 steps back and looked down at him calmly. Arms relaxed, breathing steady, his face showing neither triumph nor anger, only the focus of a man who had done what needed to be done. At that moment, the entire established hierarchy inside Cell 47D crumbled. The man whom even the guards feared was on his knees for the first time in his life before someone who weighed almost half as much. The red dust had long settled, but the air was still trembling from what had just occurred. The hierarchy that a second ago seemed unshakable now lay on the cold concrete floor alongside Crusher Morrison. On Monday morning, Bruce Lee was released. The administrative error was acknowledged, official apologies were issued, and the heavy door of Cell 47D was unlocked. He stepped out into the light, as calm as ever, back straight, as if those 3 nights in hell were just another training session. Behind him remained Morrison, who for the first time in 10 years stood at the bars, silently watching the small man walk away. In that moment, there was no longer rage in the giant's eyes, only a heavy, forced respect. 7 seconds had completely turned a cell previously considered fatal upside down. Morrison, feared even by the guards, felt for the first time in his life that power is not just about muscle. He began to change, slowly, with difficulty, but he began. When he was finally released a few years later, he no longer sought blood. Instead, he began teaching other inmates, not pure martial arts, but discipline, anger control, and respect for oneself and others. He would tell the story of how once, in a tight cell, a 2-meter killer was brought to his knees in 7 seconds by a man who weighed nearly half his size. And how in that moment, he realized for the first time that real strength isn't born from the fear you instill, but from what you are willing to learn, even when dropped to your knees. Bruce Lee never told this story publicly. He simply returned to his family, his training, and his mission, to show that human capabilities are far broader than commonly believed. But that night fight in Cell 47D stayed with him forever. It served as a reminder that the real lessons don't come in a gym or on a mat, but precisely where there are no rules, no audience, and no second chances. Years later, Morrison, by then a free man, tracked down Bruce and told him that those 7 seconds saved not only his own life, but the lives of many others whom he managed to stop from going down the path he once walked. Bruce simply nodded. He never sought gratitude. He just did what he knew best, turning even the hardest trials into an opportunity for growth. And in Prison Block D, the legend of Cell 47D still circulates. The place where in 7 seconds the entire hierarchy changed, where the most dangerous man in the prison fell to his knees for the first time and began to learn for the first time in his life. Because sometimes true strength shows itself not when you win, but when you are ready to fall and rise again as a different person. And those 7 seconds, which began with the loud clang of a door and ended with silence on the concrete floor, remained forever a reminder that even in the darkest cell, you can find light if you know how to move.